right, good evening. November 12th, 2013, Rhinebeck Town Board meeting. And we'll continue the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Anybody have announcements? Today's the day after Veterans Day. We had a great ceremony at the cemetery for the veterans of the American Legion, and it was a great day there. So we thank all the veterans for their service. And continue on. So anybody have any announcements for today?
Tom, I just wanted to mention again, workforce housing. We still have some units available at the gardens. So if anybody knows somebody who is interested in moving into the gardens and they qualify income-wise, they should contact Hudson River Housing. There's a brochure outside, and we subsidize the purchase price of those units.
We have openings for several committees. We have for the Ethics Board also. But if anybody's interested in serving or volunteering in our community for any of the committees that we have, you can certainly apply for any of them. We'll at least have your name and interest on the record for anything you're interested in the future. And also, by the way, this is the first meeting after the elections, and I want to congratulate the winners. This one supervisor.
Thank you.
Joe, another 4 years here on the town board. Elaine Fernandez, who's not here, and Judge Kane, re-elected, and a town board assessor has been elected, Charles Wiles. And one other person I'm missing, of course, our
Highway
superintendent. Who's in a much warmer place right now. I won't tell you where, but it sounds like Arizona.
Rhymes with Arizona. That's Arizona.
Any announcements, guys? Last chance.
Tom, the openings on the committees, or anyone who's interested in serving on the committees, they can get the application off the website.
We'll move for the approval of town board prior minutes, October 28th, October 30th, November 1st, November 4th, and November 6th. The first, the 28th, is the regular town board meeting, and the rest are budget workshops. So motion. Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is so moved. We do have a continuation of the public hearing for the 2014 preliminary town budget. I don't know if we've announced that as 7 p.m. or not, but I'll wait till 7 p.m. to start that. So there's also a public hearing on the 2014 Medford Sewer District budget, which I'll also wait till 7 p.m. We have no presentations, I don't believe, tonight. We do have liaison reports if anybody's up on this. Anybody have any comments?
Just so you know, Bobby's been working with Costco on nursing the heating system here along, so we think we can get through another year right now without replacing the boiler. So it's he's also working on the repairs to the pool pit and the relocation of the chlorine tanks. Well, that's in the planning stages right now, but we should be ready by the spring. He put in the 3rd and 4th Clemson pond levelers up at the landfill for the beavers. The reason we had to put the 4th one is the beavers moved downstream and built another dam. So we had to add another pipe in there. He's rebuilding the walkway between the recycling dumpsters at the transfer station. Let's see, Gina and I are working on the, trying to facilitate the gateway signs with Christian, get that through. The village and town planning boards are reviewing the TMP plans. They're doing it separately from now on, right? Then they come together at some point We are going to have to do soil tests in the picnic area because that's a wastewater or a stormwater area they like to put stuff, and we're afraid that it's sinking, so we're gonna have to check on that. I got a lot of stuff, I'm sorry. Linda Murray and I paid a visit to Milan Town Board regarding shared promotion of recreation. They were very receptive to it. We're gonna go talk to some other towns too. And for us, it's a way to drive more revenue and make better use of our resources. The committee will have recommendations for fees and committee structure next month for you. Two more things. Let's see, the soccer field up at Stone Church, the fence around it after 12 and a half years has finally been finished. The Rhinebeck Soccer League, mostly John Nancy, and the adult soccer players, mostly Gary Dial, finally finished it this weekend. So it's all fenced in after only 12 years. And the last thing was the dog park opened this weekend and it seemed to go pretty well. That's it.
I thought it was great. I thought it was really great. You can be really proud about that, Bruce.
Buddy enjoyed it.
Bruce, you mentioned something about the walkway at the transfer station, rebuilding it.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
Between the two recycling containers, that pressure treated wood in there is falling apart. So that's been cut and is being rebuilt.
Is this something Royal should?
Yeah, it's a facility maintenance, but it's ours. So
How expensive is this?
it's not really, it's a couple
Is
$100
this
bucks.
something Bobby can do?
He's already doing it.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm telling you what he's doing. It's upkeep of it. We have problems if somebody fell on it.
Anybody else? What do you have for?
I received from the county a contract for our technology grant, our $72,000 technology grant, which I will forward to all of you. I will fill it out. It's very short. It just breaks out the budget that I gave to them. And then we can have our attorney, Warren Rukansky, prepare an intermunicipal agreement for the village because we'll be administering for them as well. So that will get started pretty soon. I have a scheduling meeting with our tech people and we'll get going on that.
I met with Gary Slater from the cemetery, Bobby of Highway, and Wyatt from Highway, and Kathy and Shelley. And we combined every piece of equipment from every list that everybody has, and we got rid of the things that are no longer in service or in use or have been sold, and we added a bunch of things that hadn't been listed, and John Gautier is going to start merging those in an Excel spreadsheet and where they're all located and who's in charge of them, what their replacement value would be, and then I'm going to meet with our insurance carrier to make sure that we're properly covered.
Have you spoken to our agent, Brian?
No, he said as soon as I have the list to call him.
Great.
So John and I are starting on that this week.
Thank you.
So, any further liaison reports? We're gonna wait until 7 p.m. to hear open the public hearing for the preliminary budget and also the Denver Cove Sewer District, that they haven't mentioned that. Anybody who came in. So we'll move on to quickly approving some resolutions, approving abstract 11, vouchers V 1058 through E 1118, 53 checks in the $55,331.25.
Motion?
Discussion. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Approved. Item 2 is a resolution approving the preliminary capital project 2013 abstract 10 checks for the amount of $5,086.02. Motion and second.
Motion. Well, second.
Discussion. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item 3 is a resolution approving the budget transfers and amendments.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Item 4, a resolution authorizing the settlement of Geller Klein legal fees. That's in the amount of $6,371.75.
Motion?
A second.
Any discussion?
Thank you, Joe.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
So moved. Item 5, a resolution authorizing the execution of subscribers agreement for American School Insurance Reciprocal. That's basically just the 9-month agreement that we have to participate in as our insurer. Motion and second.
Motion. Second?
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item 6, a resolution approving contract with Columbia Green Humane Society, SPCA. Something we do every year. Is there any increase in that or no?
No.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Opposed? So moved. Item 7 is a resolution authorizing Dutchess County Real Property Tax Office to relevy on certain Vanderbilt Code Swedish accounts for 2014 county tax bills. Motion second.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's so moved. Being that it is 7 o'clock, we'll continue the public hearing on the 2014 preliminary budget for town and also a public hearing on the 2014 Vanderbilt Code Sewer District. So we open the floor for any comments for the public hearing, and this is basically an opportunity for the community to keep their concerns, voices, not basically an opportunity to engage back and forth with the town board. We are here to hear any concerns or comments in the budget. So the floor is open for both of those items.
Good evening, Supervisor, members of the board. My name is Heath Tortorella. I'm a trustee across the street in the village, and I serve as a liaison to the fire department, and that's what brings me here tonight. First of all, I'd just like to thank all of our volunteer firefighters across the 3 districts that service our town for their continued selfless service to our community. In reviewing the budget for the fire department, some of the things we noticed is that the call volume continues to increase over the years. We just had a record year. The fire department year goes from November 1st to October 31st. So we brought in a total of 801 calls, like I said, for a record. So the numbers that we talked about before have been updated slightly, and I'll have a sheet for you guys to look at. It didn't change the breakdown. Basically, the town accounts for 52% of the calls that roll out of the firehouse, but historically they paid about 40% of the bill. So conversely, the village receives about 48% of the services, but picks up 60% of it. One other thing that I looked at more recently is the comparison on per call rates from the 3 districts. And just keep in mind when we're talking about the Hillside and Rancliffe districts, they have their fire district and then also the contracted rate to cover the fire protection district. So if you add those up, which all comes eventually from the town taxpayer, the Rancliffe Fire Department is just shy of $187,000, and they respond to less than 150 calls per year. So that makes their rate $1,245 per call. Hillside is, their total is about 148,484, and they respond to less than 200 calls per year, which makes their per call rate at $742. In the current town budget, Rhinebeck is slotted for $146,340, and the Rhinebeck Fire Department responds to 431 calls, or did in the year that just ended, for a rate of $340 per call. So as you can see, it's drastically less than the other departments.
I'm sorry, on Hillside, you said how many calls?
Less than 200. And those numbers Our high-end estimates on the number of calls, probably less, but I do not have the exact numbers to work with, just to be clear on that one. So the number that the village, we have presented to the town for coverage for the calendar year 2014 is $187,953. And based on 431 calls, that would increase the rate to $436 per call. Now, if you were to look at, just break out Rhinecliff, Hillside, put them together, their rate is at least $958 per call. And again, compare that to the $436 that we're asking for. If we were to use that number, we'd be asking for almost $413,000. But like I said, it's $187,953. We just had a meeting across the streets, and the village board voted unanimously to set the contract rate for calendar year 2014 at the aforementioned $187,953.
That's that would be an increase of like 40,000.
43,000. So it's a $43,000 increase for the town.
The request.
I don't have the exact increase there, but we broke it out off of the total projected cost. It is somewhere in the neighborhood of 40,000, I do know that.
Which is about a 26% increase for the overall for the village department.
No,
For our portion of it.
I don't know about the increase. I know that it corresponds to the 52% of calls that go out to the town, in terms of what the increase to the contract is.
Yeah, just for the public, I want to make
Sure.
it clear that the fire department has come for us and asked us for about a $43,000 increase in the rate, and we're looking at it, and it means, I think our tax cap this year is what, guys, about $36,000? So for us to stay within our tax cap, which we've done so far in the budget that we've presented, we have a $36,000 raise, is $43,000 is additional, so we would probably go a little over 2% over our tax cap if we were to grant this, and we're still looking at it and still in negotiations. We haven't signed a contract yet. Is that a fair assessment? I just want the public to be aware that this is what we're looking at.
Sure.
Yeah, not 2% over what we have now, but
Yeah.
up to about 2%.
No, it would be 2% over what we have now.
$43,000.
The $46,000 would probably be I think, an additional 2.3%, so it would put us well above our tax cap, 2.3% above our tax
And we're at about 1.6.
cap, 1.66.
Do keep in mind that over the last 4 years, at least when the numbers have been tracked, it's been pretty consistent in terms of the 52%, and that's an average of the 4 years. But if you look at each year, the town has realized a savings over the last, indeterminate number of years. They've gotten a bargain on this deal per se.
I think in 2012, the number of calls shifted. The village had more calls than the town.
That's correct. There was one outlier in 2012,
Well, I think what you did, a 3-year average,
a 4-year average.
4-year average, so 25% of the time, village had more than the town.
And 75% of the time, the town had more than the village, and you take the entire average and you come up with the 48 and 52. And we would have gone back further, but it's only been tracked in that way for the last 4 years.
Thank you.
Prior to that, it was never broken out at all.
That was helpful, Keith.
Anything else?
Bruce?
No?
You're gonna give us
Oh, yeah, I got a,
the detail on the splits, right?
yes.
What you and I were doing that Sunday?
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh.
No, I meant, yeah, I meant,
I can address that as well in terms of,
we looked at 1 month, but I'm saying we would have to look at all months.
we looked at one of the 48,
Yeah.
and historically, they did not count mutual aid calls. I know that this past year, they did count, there were a total of 17 calls that went to Rhinecliff. So those were included in the town. I know the 1 month you looked at, there was, I believe, 6 calls we couldn't account for, something
Yeah.
to that effect, so.
6 or 8, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, even if you took 10% of the calls off, we'd still fall hundreds and hundreds of dollars below the per call rate of the other providers to the protection districts.
Now, who provides ambulance coverage for Hillside during the day?
As I understand it, as I don't represent Hillside, but as I understand it, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Northern Dutchess Paramedics provides coverage to Hillside. 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Rhinebeck Fire Department provides that coverage free of charge to Hillside.
Okay, and that's an agreement from one company to the other, it's not through the special district, is that correct?
As I understand it, yes, but I can't speak definitively on that.
Who's got Ferncliff?
Ferncliff is the town.
Fire protection district.
Rhinebeck, yeah. But do keep in mind, and John maybe could help me out, that the Rhinebeck Fire Department does not have the apparatus to reach the top of Ferncliff Nursing Home, so whenever there's a call there, Rhinebeck has to take the ladder there as well, so.
On first alarm.
Yeah, so, definitely a lot of cooperation.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand.
Sure. Those are all, I don't know all the details of the operational side of it.
And we have until December 31st to sign the contract, right?
I believe so. I mean, it goes a calendar year, so.
Okay.
Do you include EMS calls? I mean, strictly?
Yes, they are included. I do have,
Or is this all,
they're all included. I want to say, that one's in my other folder across the street, waiting to get to the department report, but it's about, it's a similar breakdown. I think there's over 500 of those 801, roughly 500 are EMS calls, and the breakout is fairly similar to that. I can get you that, yeah, 500 of the 800 for the year are EMS calls, which, as I understand it, tend to be longer in duration. You know, they aren't able to track man hours and actual cost of what supply is used and mileage and all that.
Do you have a copy of the contract you guys put on? You guys approved the contract, you can?
We just established a rate on the contract, so I do have a copy of last year's contract.
No, I don't.
somewhere.
I thought you had a new one for this year.
No, we didn't draft the contract, just established the total amount.
You said you had a copy of last year's contract, it's an extra, can I get a copy of last year's?
Sure, I mean, it should be on file here at the town and on file at the village, but I don't have it right here in this folder, but it's available for all of us to look at. All right,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
So the floor is open for public comment for hearings on both the 2014 town preliminary budget and for also the 2014 Denver Code Sewer District budget. Anybody has any comments? And I think we're going to keep the public hearing open until the next meeting, is that correct or not?
No.
We should close it.
Yeah, we'll set a date for the next meeting.
All right. So,
Good evening. I'm Egon Olofsson from Binderberg Cove. I have a few questions because I'm still in the darkness. What I would like to find out, because I see something about an EFC 30-year interest-free loan, and then I see that all the monies from the DEC grant have been applied to the EFC loan. Well, what I would like to know is, how much money did we get from the grant? What was paid? What wasn't paid? What was denied by the grant to us? What is that interest-free loan when, from what I understood, that grant was going to cover pretty much everything? So what I would like to find out, and I think a lot of the people in Vanderburg Cove, is What happened? What was denied? What was the sewer district in Vanderbilt Cove denied the engineering fees that were given because they changed from one engineering firm to Morris Associates? What happened in that? How much money was denied because of the switch of engineering? How much money was denied because of the pumping? That was an insane, intensive pumping that went to pump water that was being infiltrated into the system because the catch basins were not sound. And I think if you all here can recall, for 7 years, I fought to have those catch basins fixed. And from what I understand, that was done for $75,000. What was the total cost of the pumping that went in, and was that denied in the grant that was given to us? Because decisions were made for the pumping instead of a decision made to fix where the water that was going into the system was coming. So I would just like to have the town board send us something to show us this is what the grant was, this is what was denied, and why. Before anybody can vote on anything, because I'm paying $1,200 a year, and I want to know, why am I paying for a loan? And I have one more question. In one of the meetings of the board, half of some of the cost, the town board had decided that they were going to give us a credit for half of that cost incurred, and they were going to pay for it to help us. What happened to that deal? Did the town of Rhinebeck renege on their promise to take half of that cost? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a public hearing, so we're not going to engage in that. Any further comments on the budgets, Edinburgh Code or the 2014 budget? Thanks for your comments, appreciate it. I think at this time we'll have a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion.
A second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
That's so moved. All right, we'll continue with the items for business. A resolution approving the business associate agreement with Marshall and Sterling Insurance. Motion and second.
Motion, second.
All in favor, aye.
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 Item 10,
We did forget 8.
right, we'll go back to that in a second. Item 10 is a resolution approving the rates for the MVP Healthcare Medical Goldware PPO for 2013. Motion and second.
A motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Go back to 8, a resolution approving the amendment for the intermunicipal agreement with the Vanderbilt Sewer District between the town and the town of Hyde Park. Motion and second.
Motion.
This is what you'd asked for about the billing all from one place, what the committee had asked for. So that this is just puts it in place. So we're following through on that. We'll do all the billing from this point.
Okay.
For people who live in Hyde Park.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It had been that way for years, and then they somehow split it up, and they were getting different bills than Rhinebeck residents were, and it was bizarre. Sorry, aye.
No, appreciate it. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is so moved. Item,
Just going back to 10 for a second, Tom, the rates for the MVP Healthcare Gold, are those the ones that came in a little lower than we had anticipated? That was one of the few times since I've been on the board that that's ever happened, so I appreciate it.
Item 11 is a resolution approving 2014 contract with Harris Computer Systems for the town tax collector software. Motion and second.
A motion. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes, so moved. Resolution number, item 12, resolution accepting the rezoning petition for John McGuire.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes,
Go ahead.
I've asked John Lyons and Michael Tremble here, I think also Mr. McGuire and his planner this year. Would somebody like to take us through the proposal?
Hi, good evening. John Lyons, land use attorney for the town. This is a rezoning petition. This is similar to the core group petition that got processed earlier in the year. So you may recall that earlier this year you established a policy which provides informational and procedural framework for processing these applications. So you've been around the track once on this, and I think things went pretty smoothly the first time around. The step that's being taken tonight is the initial step in the process. Mr. McGuire's petition is going to be submitted to you this evening, and the first step that you need to take is just deciding whether to accept the petition. And what that means is, because accepting and considering these petitions are purely discretionary acts on your part, and you can either decide to entertain them or not as you see fit. The first decision, that level decision that has to be made, is whether you're willing to entertain that at all. And that's what, by accepting the petition, you are saying that you are willing to do that, and you're also saying that the material that's been submitted to you is complete and in accordance with the policy on this. Mr. McGuire is engaged Dan Schuster, who is the same planning consultant who worked for the core group, so Dan's familiar with the process and familiar with what your expectations are. As was done with the core group, this petition isn't coming to you cold. Dan formulated the petition in draft format, and he sat down at various times with Michael and with me, and with also Lisa Camp and Jeff Romano, to go over the petition and discuss it, so that we had a chance to give some informal input at an early level, and to be able to make an informal recommendation to the town board as to whether the petition should be accepted. And it's come through that process, and I believe that everybody's in agreement that the town board should entertain this application. So I'll turn the floor over to Dan. If you're interested in just hearing some of the basics about what the petition involves and what's being proposed, he can take you through that.
Thank you, John.
Good evening. I'm Dan Schuster, planning consultant, assisting Mr. McGuire with this application. In brief summary, when the 2009 zoning law was adopted, it rezoned an area south of the village on the east side of Route 9 that had previously been R1 district, and it's a neighborhood made up of lots which pretty much conform to those R1 standards, approximately 1 acre, a little bit over an acre in area. With the exception of the 37 lots in the neighborhood, 35 of them are around 1 acre, some less, some more. And 2 additional lots, Mr. McGuire's, and 1 other lot about 5 acres. The standards of the RC5 district, which would now apply in that area, obviously prevent any further subdivision of those lots, but in addition, the setback requirements make most of the houses in that area now non-conforming, so that additions of a porch or a rear deck is very likely require at best a variance because of those standards. What Mr. McGuire is proposing is to take advantage of a provision that was first outlined in the comprehensive plan and then incorporated in the zoning law, which essentially recognized within that huge area east of Route 9, most of which is low density, but there are some areas where there are existing neighborhoods of smaller homes. The comprehensive plan proposed something called the neighborhood infill overlay zone, which would override the lot size requirements in certain designated areas to allow those neighborhoods to continue to provide affordable housing and to just comply with what the existing conditions in the neighborhood already were. Only one area was initially put in that overlay zone, the area in Sapasco.
That was done in 2009 as part of the original zoning, so we do have something in a NI-0 district.
Correct. And what's being proposed now is that the area that you have before you is about 40 acres, as I say, with 37 existing homes, also be designated that neighborhood infill overlay district. That does two things. It'll makes most of the lots now in that area conforming in terms of area. It would allow subdivision of the two lots that are larger, subject to approval of the planning board. But what it also does...
Can I ask you a question on that? So the way I understand this, if we create this district, there could be 11 new houses. How many new houses are we talking about? One lot is, I think, 6 acres. I don't know if there's anything on it, or the 6 acres.
The 6 acre lot has an existing house. As it happens, there was a subdivision proposed before the new zoning was approved, which would have added 3 lots, or 4?
So
4 lots.
you could have then 5 new houses on that 6 acre plot?
4.
4 more. And then what about the 5.27 acres?
That's already got a 2-family house on it. And conceivably, depending on the physical layout and the ability to provide this utilities, you might get 3 more houses on it.
Okay, so the practical thing is 7 more houses in this 37 acres.
As a maximum, yeah.
Is it in the LWRP?
No.
It's not, right?
No, it's beyond
And we're not being asked to decide yes or no, we're just deciding to let it go through the process. It will still need to go through all of the planning and zoning approval process.
correct.
Okay. got it.
Well, there'll be, so there'll be 2 levels. After tonight, one of the things that if you decide to accept this, one of the things you'll be doing is referring this matter to the CAB and the planning board, and they'll be providing you with written recommendations. And then it'll come back to you, and you'll have an opportunity to review those recommendations and debate it amongst yourselves, obtain more information from the applicant if you want that. And then once the zone, if you decide to change the zone and the zone is changed, then any subdivision or any attempts to add additional housing to that neighborhood would be subject to the normal review process, subdivision and site plan review in front of the planning board.
When do these owners of the 37 parcels in this thing that may change, when do they get notice, and when do they have an opportunity to come in? Do they get notice?
They do. You'll hold a public hearing in connection with this, because the rezoning is essentially it's a legislative act. It's an amendment to the zoning
So
law.
we would hold a public hearing,
Yes.
and we could, as part of this, ask that notice actually go out to all 37 parcel owners.
Sure, that's possible.
we can make that
It's not
condition.
required by the law, but you could ask that.
Right.
Because this is a discretionary process, you don't have to be doing this at all. You're free to make requests like that.
But in planning and in zoning, you would be notifying the neighbors as well.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's just the adjoining property owners. I'm talking about all 37 because we're
Everybody in
affecting,
the district.
yeah, we're
Right.
affecting a whole district.
Right.
So I think it's at least fair that they should have an opportunity
I think that's a
to
good point.
know and say.
The thing is that, and I think, I don't know, how much people know about what the impact of this will be, but most, I think the impacts are gonna be positive to the people that already have homes in this district because of not being non-conforming uses, number one, and then the bulk regulations that apply to the district that's proposed are much more in keeping with the lot sizes that are there rather than the RC5 district. So it's a better fit in many ways. It's liable to require less red tape on behalf of residents of that district if they want to make changes to their property.
So in theory, we think they all should be happy.
I think that's
Theory
speculating,
being the key
but
word.
the should is the key term.
One other thing that the overlay district does, in recognizing that it's allowing smaller lots, it also recognizes that some of the uses permitted in the RC5 district in the more rural areas of town are other non-residential or more than single-family customary residential uses. It limits those, so you could not have, for instance, funeral homes or farm markets or
Mini golf.
It's mini golf.
Yeah.
you could not have a golf course. On your 1 acre lot, you could not have a golf course.
Okay.
I see the draft, I guess, CEQA form that's part of the package. I was just wondering, there's the project description, project acre to be developed, no change. Project acres to remain undeveloped, no change. But in fact, if we pass this, it would allow 7 more houses.
But the changing of the zoning doesn't generate any development. Should you change the zone, an applicant coming for a subdivision would then have to go through the secret process.
Right, but I think we're sticking our head in the sand if we don't realize that it opens up this possibility, which may be a fine possibility, and maybe nobody has a problem.
I think, go ahead.
I just one other question. You compare this to the RM1 restrictions. Where is the RM1 zoning now?
It's along the extension of Market Street going down to Rhinecliff.
That's all RM1.
Somewhere along there, I believe, some of Rhinecliff, I believe, is also RM1. There's not much of it.
No.
There's not much of it. There was more.
I think that one of the key issues is that, presented this before, was that there was a contractor's yard, and by approving this would take that commercial element out of this this concept of residential development. So even though there's an issue of potential growth for residential property, it does take out, it kind of unifies the zoning into the community that exists, except for that commercial piece of property. I mean, that's going to be gone with this, right?
Yes.
That's the concept of this.
Yes, contractor's yard would not be a permitted use in that, in the overlay district. It is a permitted use in the RC5.
We also ask the applicant to fund an escrow tonight, or if we accept it.
I'm sorry. We're doing the escrow account tonight.
Oh. If we vote to accept.
What amount of escrow is it?
I think we need to accept the application and then discuss it.
Decide then at
Yeah.
a subsequent thing what we need in the way of escrow.
We have a planning chair and our land use attorney, I'm sure they could recommend an amount.
Do we have a schedule for that? Or not?
A month.
Yes,
I
we
think we
do.
do recommend.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So, any discussion from the board?
No, there's also an application fee if we accept this. The applicant would have an application fee for the zoning review change, the zoning change, which we passed earlier this year. No, I'm familiar with this.
So we'll have a motion and a second to approve.
Motion.
Second?
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
So we have accepted the petition, and I guess as a 12A, I don't know if we need to set a fee for the escrow, or is that something that can?
The amount of escrow, we're just trying to put our heads together to see if we can remember how much of an escrow we use for the core group.
I think it was 3,500, could be mistaken.
Well, I think you guys are going to give us an estimate of what
Do you remember, Robert,
will be involved.
the amount of escrow for the core group? Robert? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Schuster. Dan, sorry about that.
If I had to guess, then it was something in the $3,000 to $4,000.
I think it was $3,500.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I think this is different. I think we got to get from.
We don't have to decide that tonight.
Right, yeah. Why don't we get estimates from John, and I don't know who else will be involved in this for the town. Do we need Tech Fink? Do we need somebody else?
Well, don't forget the escrow gets replenished too, so
Yeah.
it's just to get it started, and we can set a reasonable number, and we have an escrow clerk who will let us know when it's low and to be replenished. I think we should move it,
Great.
So we'll just establish a line, an escrow line, and then follow up with the amount? I mean, you don't need us to approve the dollar figure, right? I mean, in order to move forward?
Tonight, you just have to say that you want to establish the escrow. We can, you can amend the resolution to just investigate the amount that needs to be required. Set that.
So, motion and second to approve an escrow line for the John McGuire property.
I think you've done it.
Did we?
Elizabeth motioned, I second.
It's open, yeah.
Oh, we did?
Yes.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
So John, you can let us know how much you think your fee will be and who else will be involved with the town.
Yeah, I'll do that. I think although it is different, I think although the substance of the proposal is different, the kinds of things that we're looking at are similar to the core group.
Whatever.
We'll probably use that as a guide.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Tom, can we skip ahead to 16 since that seems to be...
16, item 16 is a resolution approving the agreement with Victor Cartier and the Endeavor Inc. for grant writing and other services.
I'd like to speak.
Motion and
Motion.
second?
A motion.
Second.
I've also asked Nancy Clark from Bergman Anthony is here with us. She, her engineering firm worked with us about a year and a half ago when we were looking at the drainage issues in Rhinebeck. And we have some residents here and of course Victor.
Any comments from the board? So,
I'd like to hear primarily from Nancy. Victor has made clear to me that he's going to need an engineer to go ahead with this, to work with on the grant application.
Can we have Victor just introduce what this entails, and then I have some specific questions for Nancy, and I'm sure the public will have some comments.
Victor Cornelius, I have done grant work for the town, and it's often done now for about 12 or 13 years in a variety of different projects. The thing that's motivating this is the Superstorm Sandy money appropriation from the end of January 2013. The money is being brought down to the local level through the state of New York through a variety of agencies. FEMA has had the first shot. There is $7.4 billion in the Hudson Valley pot north of Westchester. FEMA has already spent the first $1 billion of that, and we are about to have a release for requests for letters of intent for what's called the HUD-DR, meaning Disaster Relief Community Development Block Grant funding portion, which was announced 2 weeks ago as being approximately $2.1 billion, again for the Hudson Valley, North and Westchester County, which is a lot of money. There will be additional grant processes beyond that. This is the one that's at hand. This is the one that is probably the most discretionary. A few of them always get a little bit more political than other ones. I've been asked to deliver projects to congressional offices so that they can go on prioritized lists. There is not a cost-benefit analysis requirement in this funding. There is also not the repair of FEMA-recognized impacts to the site or the project site. In this particular round. This Dutchess County, in actuality, has only recently been added as an eligible geographic area to it because the county did not declare itself a disaster area during Sandy. However, there is concern on the congressional level that the amount of funding that there is needs to be applied to infrastructure hardening in areas that had complete demonstration of the need for that, not just during Superstorm Sandy, but during Hurricane Eileen and the subsequent Hurricane Lee, about 10 days later. So, with that in mind, I proposed engaging an issue that has faced Rhinecliff and the property owners there for many, many years, which is the design and implementation of a stormwater management system that would be designed and built in conjunction with a sanitary sewer system and avoid some of the inflow and infiltration issues that are predominant in the Hudson Valley with communities that built these systems 100, 120 years ago. So you've got an opportunity here. I think my sense is from the regulatory bodies is that they would love to see the town take this step. They would probably require you to take this step at some point down the road. I think you're cognizant of that. Largely because there is a great deal of septic discharge directly into the Hudson, and the Hudson, as we all know, is being progressively utilized more and more as a drinking water resource for communities large and small, and particularly in this vicinity.
As our drinking water is from the Hudson.
Right. So anything that we can do to enhance water quality, mitigate potential storm effects, and actually implement a system that will allow for an appropriate amount of appropriate range of additional dense, concentrated growth as per the Governor Cuomo's smart growth programs is being encouraged.
Well, I just want to be clear that our growth here in Rhinebeck is governed by, happily, through our comprehensive zoning plan. So
Yes.
zoning. This does not, putting in this system doesn't mean that Rhinecliff will explode. It means in line with the existing community and hamlets there will have better resources for dealing with the issues at hand, the stormwater and the sanitation issues.
Absolutely.
Which we're going to be forced to deal with at some point, if not now, maybe a year or several down the road.
Yes, but
This is an opportunity to get a full grant to cover it.
that's true. Also in terms of, and I've worked with a number of communities, Greenville in Greene County, for example, which has a pretty well-defined core village district. They are facing similar circumstances with their proximity to the Catskill Creek watershed and failing septics. And what is also happening there, they're going through their whole comp plan process, they're doing all of that. At the bottom line, at the end of the day, the existing commercial structures, many of which have really fine architectural fabric to them, within the hamlet core, do not, because of current wastewater management failures, largely old septic systems, have the capacity to support restaurants, food chain stores, or small markets, which require larger wastewater capacity than their ancient failing septics can sustain. So I'm not particularly talking about increased development, but I'm talking about freer range of availability of retail commercial possibilities there too. I've seen that happen in many communities, in existing structures.
So we're talking tonight about funding you for the first phase of this, which would be a letter of intent for the application, and then we would need to get an engineer on board. At some point, we would need what type of plan to submit for this?
The LOI, which has not been,
LOI?
letter of intent, which has not been released by HUD yet, but the announcement that it is coming has been, will come from the paperwork. The online application process will originate at the New York State Office of Community Renewal, Housing and Community Renewal. They keep changing the acronyms the more federal money they get. It is to mirror, I have been told, the FEMA letter of intent process, which had a closing date of August 1st. The requirements of it are a fairly cursory but accurate description of the problems that are posed, any backup data, particularly anything from DEC or the Department of Health.
This is the engineering requirements?
Well, this is the requirements of the LOI. Any correspondence that the town may have received or any engagement with the regulatory authorities over the issue that you have, or that had.
Do we have any of that stuff?
Well, we have a year and a half or over a year ago, we spoke with 3 engineering firms.
No, I'm asking, do we have anything from DEC or federal agent or any agency indicating problems?
It would, I think we could have Nancy speak to that, but we do have some stuff from the Department of Health.
Oh, you do?
I
was
is it-
asking,
Oh,
do you?
In actuality, a letter of support from the Dutchess County Department of Health would probably would be adequate.
would you be seeking this out for
Yes.
us, or you would?
A cursory project description, a listing of the problem, listing of what the proposed solution is, a general timeline for the implementation of that solution, and a dollar figure. We do not have to present a carefully constructed, broken out budget. I've also been instructed, for purposes of the LOI, we take our best guess engineering estimate and we mark it up 30% and submit it as a dollar figure.
And then if this is accepted, we move to the next phase.
We move to we would be invited to submit a full application.
It's that next step that concerns me in terms of what's that going to cost, and if we don't get the grant, we don't get any reimbursement. I assume if we get the grant, there is, or is there reimbursement to?
There's a reimbursement for planning costs.
Okay, so the issue is, how detailed do you need it for the second step?
They will include that in the application. It's generally along the lines of what I would consider and what EFC considers at the state level a preliminary engineering report, which addresses, again, the problem in a bit more detail and as quantitatively as can be projected. Do you have specific areas of outflow? What is the outflow into the Hudson during severe weather events? Do you have any indication of that? If you don't, when do you plan to do the testing for it? An identification of most likely problem spots. I would not suggest that you do television work for this thing or try and ascertain, dig anything up or do water quality testing or any of those impacts at that point. The budget analysis I'm in the middle of the FEMA process now. The budget analysis generally is probably somewhere in the range of a 10 to 15 line budget with engineering, permitting, bid process, preliminary demolition, any demolition, easement acquisition, sort of the construction is the big number, and it's usually all encompassing. And then any kind of post-construction testing and closeout that's required.
Is the letter, I'm sorry, Joe, go ahead.
Is part of the grant then, could be also for additional engineering?
Yes.
Because it sounds like
Well, you'll have to
it's not
do.
complete engineering.
No, it's not final design. Final design is included at post-award. And that actually, one would expect to be the largest body of work that would be in front of you. And it needs to develop a full map plan and report with all of the mapping and all of the additional support.
That comes later, if
That
we
comes later.
get the grant.
Yes.
Have you read, I think we got from Nancy's firm a study?
Yes, that's
or
not been submitted to
proposal.
me.
What?
That's not been submitted to me yet.
Oh, you haven't seen it,
I've
so
heard about
you don't know whether that's sufficient or not to...
That was for stormwater.
That was a proposal to do a study relative to stormwater. It was not a study. It was a proposal to do a study, and you chose to not do the study.
We ought to get Victor a copy of it so he can see
Where are you going with it?
whether he can use that. I understand it's
Well,
just for stormwater.
At that time, we were talking about drainage exclusively.
Stormwater
but-
drainage.
Yeah, but when we talked about that, we talked about the likely discovery
Nancy,
of...
would you like to just give people
Sure. Hello, my name is Nancy Clark. I'm a civil engineer with Urban Anthony of Kingston, and I was here in January of 2012 to interview for a project for a stormwater study. We wrote the proposal in November of 2011, and when we were here talking with you, we discussed the idea of excavating within the roads to replace small storm facilities with larger storm facilities, and the likelihood that we'd probably find failed septic systems and we'd probably find tainted soil and smelly water going into the storm sewer. And at that time, it would be necessary for the homeowners to resolve issues with the existing septic systems if they had trouble. This project that Victor's talking about, if the funding is, if this project is eligible in that funding, it would be an excellent opportunity for the town to deal with wastewater and stormwater at the same time. You would have to deal with sanitary sewer collection, drainage analysis and improvements for that, and also wastewater treatment, because where are you going to send the sanitary sewer waste? Maybe you'll communicate with a neighboring municipality for treatment at their plant. Maybe the project would include plant expansion. That would have to be discussed in prep for the letter of intent, just in a very high altitude general. Could we make this work so that we could figure out per gallon costs and come up with the conceptual look necessary for this letter of intent that Victor's talking about.
You're saying to send our sewage to another facility as opposed to creating our own facility? An option.
Yeah, you do have an option of creating your own treatment plant, but it's a pretty small neighborhood, and when you have economy of scale, wastewater treatment is less costly per unit if you have a better economy of scale.
How could we get it just How could we get it to our facility?
Well,
It's right next door.
yeah, the village of Rhinebeck, their wastewater collection system, and I haven't discussed this with the village, so, and I have no authority for.
No,
for
this
that.
is all
But,
hypothetical.
okay, so the wastewater treatment plant for the village is on Astor Drive, and the gardens at Rhinebeck is served with sanitary sewer collection. So just having driven to Rhinecliff, not having looked at any maps to start engineering this, but you'd have to collect by gravity and then you'd have to pump up over the hill. And my guess is that the wastewater treatment plant, I think the village might be at coming to the end of their comfort for what they've promised for capacity for projects, because I know that there are some projects that are in paper and maybe not built yet, but they've been promised capacity. So if that was a reasonable solution, I think you'd have to participate in an expansion.
Well, you know, we can't really ask you questions because you're not the engineer, but one of my, you know, we're responding to a grant.
Yep.
We're not really responding to anything other than a grant showed up, an opportunity, so we're creating a project concept. But you're talking about a municipal sewer facility, or sharing one. With technology today, there are opportunities for individuals to have their own sewer treatment on their property, like a small BioClear, which could be discharged into this water, could be discharged into Hudson, which it happens at Van Hope.
Right, the Rhinebeck Hotel has a BioClear unit.
Right.
So
my concern is, first of all, we don't know whose sewer is being discharged into whatever the storm drain system. I mean, it could be 5 houses, it could be 20, it could be 2. So my concern is that we're engaging in this huge concept of a project that might only serve a handful of people, which would ultimately create a special district that would tax this whole area.
Well, can I speak to just generalities relative to Rhinecliff? Rhinecliff, there's a lot of rock, there's a lot of poor soils, there's a steep slope, sheer drop off down towards the railroad and the river, small lots. There's a very good chance that many of those lots would not support a current day standard septic system. I've designed, in the last year and a half, I did design a replacement system for a house in Rhinecliff, and we weren't able to put a standard system there. There's a peat biofilter in one of the yards. It was, more expensive than usual, and it was a pretty heavy lift to get it through the health department. If you did as you went down the road, if you wanted to do benefit cost of individual on site, non-traditional systems versus an overall system for a town district, those are exercises that could be done when you got later down in the process. I would think that for this initial letter of intent, the conservative thing would be to consider central sewer for Rhinecliff, and you won't have ironed out whether you're going to have a centralized plant for Rhinecliff or you're going to go to the village, but you can make some assumptions so that you're asking for, at least in the on the right planet as far as ballpark for numbers.
With the grant, the grant assumes that you're gonna complete a whole project. I mean, we don't know what's needed because we haven't dug into the roadways to find out where
That's the 30% mark.
but I thought that was you.
No, that was, Joe's precluded that at this point. Thank you. One of the issues, one of the interesting things that I've been experiencing in the last several weeks, in the FEMA process, they're requiring us to do engineering back narratives in the full application. Not lengthy, but an intelligent discussion of, number one, what happens if there's no action taken? Number 2 and 3, what other alternatives have been considered and why have they been rejected? So, yeah, this is what's keeping me busy these days. One thing you could consider in terms of the cost of a pump station and additional line to the village plan, if they were willing, is actually the cost of capacity increases to the plant. That would be funded through this process, if the village would agree.
Is the letter of intent, is your first stage of payment, Victor, more than the letter of intent, or is that all that's entailed in the first phase?
There's a lot to organize. I also, it includes the incumbent time in Albany and Washington DC that goes along with it, which I would charge you separately.
And also getting all the information together.
Yes.
For the letter of intent.
It is not a simple process. There are, good.
The letter of intent, they were talking about $3,000. You're not talking about that. What was it for? And $3,000
Knocking it down.
for Victor's services for the proposal. I don't think the letter of intent is a big deal. I think you probably could write it now as to what, but you don't have to answer that. My issue is, assuming that they accept the letter of intent, you're going to need a proposal.
Right.
And some of the engineering could go in that proposal.
The major portion of the preliminary engineering will be required to be put together for that proposal.
So the question, assuming Nancy's firm works with us in doing the actual proposal, I guess I want to get a handle on what's involved, what's it going to cost, knowing that we can put more engineering in afterwards. We probably should ask for the maximum amount. They'll either give it or they won't give it. And if they give it, then, we have money to play with in terms of coming up with the best design. But it sounds like you have to get together with Nancy to get a feel and come back to us with what would be involved from Nancy's firm.
You mean between the letter of intent, if the letter of intent is accepted and the, yes, I would say it's probably not terribly different from what you would put together for scoring for EFC on a CWSRF application. So if you have a ballpark price for that, I mean, if you give us a sort of average or a high-end guesstimate on that, I think that's the frame of reference for that.
Victor, is there a deadline for the LOI?
Currently, I'm being told it will be the end of the second week in December.
But the form's not available yet.
No, but FEMA, to give you an idea, the full FEMA application that I've just gone through, we were all told it was going to be released, it was going to be put online and open for us to utilize on October 1st, with an October 31st deadline. They opened it on October 16th. They closed everything off on October 31st. 3/4 of the municipalities I'm dealing with hadn't put together enough engineering to support the applications. They have reopened them, and we had a Friday night deadline for submission, and then we had a Sunday night deadline for submission. And I'm still getting engineering in, and the applications are still open.
Assuming we get the LOI, when is the final proposal due? Do we know that?
They will tell you it will be within a month of the letter in which they're trying to keep to the schedule of responding to the LOI within a month of receiving it, and then giving you, let's see, so it was August for the FEMA. We got the requests to proceed to full application, I believe, around September 20th. We had an August 31st deadline to submit, And because FEMA has to make its announcements before HUD completes its review of their LOIs, the announcement of the awards is going to be made before January 1st. The other caveat to this.
Okay, so you're analogizing this to what we did for FEMA as to a time period?
Yes.
Is that what you're trying to
It
do?
will have to be. Part of the issue is that, give you a little of the.
Well, what does that translate in terms of time period? Is it 1 month, 2 months, 3 months?
I would anticipate that the HUD will respond to the LOI submissions within 4 to 6 weeks. I think that's
How
fair.
much time do we have, assuming we get it? How much time do we have?
4 to 6 weeks additionally.
Another 4 to 6 weeks
Right.
to get an actual
They
proposal.
want to, the oversight on this is that this is a $65 billion federal appropriation that was passed by this Congress at the end of January. The negotiation for bringing it to the full floor of the House, which as you know is a very difficult thing to get done these days, with the conservative wing of the Republican Party was that, well, the first threat came where they said, well, if you don't give us this disaster relief money now, we're not going to, the Democrats are not going to respond to disasters in your districts. And they came back and they said, the conservatives said, fine, Mr. Boehner will allow its release to the full floor of the House for a vote, but we're still paying for Katrina 8 years out. You have 2 years from the date of the passage of the appropriation to commit the money. So it's all going through the governor's office. It is being run as a jobs program. The first 6 months, the governor has negotiated with the federal government in order to see how much of it he can use to beef up the state bureaucracy that has been being cut for the last 6 years. So the state's been in a headlong rush to spend their portion. It's now on the floor. We've already lost, 10 months of this process. So they have to commit to these funds by March or April of 2014. So this is what I'm doing.
And the districts that commit the money after appropriation, would that basically be, the town has gone through Mount Plan report, they've gone through seeker, they're in design, I mean, that level?
No, they're in contract with the Office of Community Renewal to spend the money. And to get to contract, we will have to do seeker and NEPA. We'll have to do NEPA as well. It's federal money.
Okay.
I'm sorry, secret and what else?
NEPA.
National Environmental Protection.
Which is an interesting process. I won't go into it. It's very different from seeker.
I guess I just want to clarify what engineering we would need to get, if we're invited to submit an application, what kind of engineering costs would we be committing to?
Well, as I said, it would be similar to a preliminary engineering report that was filed with Vandenberg Cove that generated the initial 0% loan.
What are we talking? 10,000, 30,000, 400,000?
Recognize that I just got a phone call about this on
Yeah.
Friday afternoon.
Which,
Okay.
thank you for coming,
Okay,
yes.
so,
Thank you.
but just ballpark, I'm more comfortable with a range
Yes.
because there's a lot not defined here.
Yes.
But it feels like 5,000 to 12,000.
Okay.
Good.
That's
So
what it
it's
feels
not-
like.
It's not 400,000, it's
No,
400.
no. And it depends on what the requirements are for the paperwork that's not yet available, for how stringent the application is, and the requirements that Victor helps to make more specific.
It's a lot of juggling right now, a lot of tap dancing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I would also say that from my experience as a grant writer, that cost is very well within the range of what I've experienced in many communities for a preliminary engineering report. One thing that will be required in that, unlike in a normal slip lining report that one does for, fixing something, we will have to do not a hugely extensive but intelligently addressed analysis of the historic resources in the community and how they may be impacted by the construction.
What does that mean?
A report on this is, these are the easements that we are likely to have to purchase. These are the historic structures that we are likely to have some disturbance with. And that is going to be, that is an issue that we're going to have to address at that point.
And that's probably even more stringently on the table because it's federal money.
That's
It's
right.
federal money, they're very much interested in making sure that you deal with historical and archaeological.
Well, if everything is in the street, are we into easements and historic structures?
Well, you may or may not be, depending upon whether or not it's all in the street. You have to determine that first. But historic structures also include 100-year-old, 150-year-old granite curbing, any kind of horse
Stone walls.
things, stone
Hitching
walls,
posts,
hitching
stone
posts, all of that has to be taken into consideration in the discussion. Bluestone sidewalks.
But be clear that, I don't think, Victor, that the requirement is that you've analyzed that at the preliminary engineer stage.
Not preliminary.
Will the town have to have gone through NEPA by the time they make their application for the grant? I hope not.
No, but they will by the time they sign the contract. After the grant award and before the contract signed.
So somewhere in the March to April timeline?
That's correct.
Okay, because there's a whole lot of analysis that would go into NEPA, and I would think that gets deeper into the design process after the town has a grant and they have funding for engineering.
My understanding is that they won't release funds until those reviews are complete.
Well, but are we at risk for that cost, or it's been
No.
announced that we're gonna get the grant, so,
If there's an announcement, you're not gonna lose the grant. You could do a bonding anticipation note on the grant at that point, if you needed to.
We could take a loan, what do you think? Take a loan on it, right?
If the grant would pay off at signing a contract.
I happen to have lunch with an attorney that's working in Cuomo's office to disperse these exact funds in this exact area.
Okay.
So I've put in some questions and reach out to him, and I'll let you know if I can get any good information.
Get me in a lunch meeting. It isn't Andrew Kennedy, is it?
No,
Nancy, for this ballpark that you gave us of 5 to 7, and, I'm not gonna.
5 to
Oh,
12?
5 to 12, I'm sorry. That was unintentional. 5 to 12, I was gonna say, I won't hold you to that ballpark, because I think you gotta think
But
about
it's
it.
not urban
But-
oriented.
But would that ballpark include both stormwater and sanitary?
Yes, the preliminary engineer's report should discuss the project in concept in total. And so it should discuss stormwater improvements, wastewater collection, and wastewater treatment, at least in some preliminary fashion.
And can I add to that from my point of view, is that if you were engaging both issues at the same time, particularly in the light of the storm events of the last 2.5 years, the regulatory authorities are going to prioritize this project. Because if what you're doing is designing a system that operates concurrently and is constructed with the cost efficiencies at the same time, it's a real benefit.
Victor, 2 other questions. What are really our chances of getting this? Billions sounds great, but we are
Let me tell
little
you,
Rhinebeck here.
let me tell you, I have 14 municipalities now that I'm working on this thing with. I got calls in Maine from Gibson's and Maloney's offices, because I work in both districts, saying bring in every project you've got. The first deadline for the FEMA request was July 3rd. The governor's office on July 2nd extended it and extended it to include the Mohawk Valley, saying that the storms in the Mohawk Valley this spring meant that they should also be spending money up there. The real scuttlebutt was they weren't getting any projects. They weren't getting enough projects in to stop up the $1 million that FEMA was trying to expend, the billion. Then 2 weeks later, because they were having issues over the large bulk, the $27 billion they've been spending in New York on all of this, they moved Westchester County out of the Hudson Valley pool of funding, leaving us with the $7.4 billion without competing with anything in Westchester. They moved it into the city's pool because they're having trouble spending that money down there. Then they added projects that involved Lee and Irene, as well as Sandy. Then they added projects from Lee and Irene, which were not adequately funded from FEMA's public assistance funding back then. So communities are now going back to that period of time and issuing up invoicing that they paid for or bonded for that were rejected by FEMA in 2011, and that's being funded. The latest twist in the HUD piece is that it is heavily discretionary. There will be a prioritized list coming out of the congressional offices from the governor and 2 congressmen who work and live in one of the 2 last swing districts in this country are very, very anxious to get this money on the ground as quickly as they can, and preferably before the election in 2014. That's the picture on the political side.
I was expecting percentage. We have a 75% chance of getting it.
My belief is that they're going to be turning money back because the levels of detail and bureaucracy about seeing these grants through one step after another. First of all, I mean, I was dealing with Prattsville. I was dealing with a number of communities where you don't have a clerk or a supervisor or a board member that is particularly computer literate. And all of this stuff is online. So many of the communities in the Catskills who really, really, really need this money don't have access to it simply because of their own lack of capacity on the ground.
But you're working for a lot of other municipalities who are going to compete with us.
Compete with you? I think that you will be the only municipality I'll be working for who doesn't have a functional system at all. So I don't think we're competing here.
That leads me into the last question. Are we, to do the application, the LOI, are we opening the commode, are we exposing ourselves by
to DEC orders on consent or some kind of
regulatory action, or what's the ramification of?
Well, you're probably very good at positioning these things in a way where it doesn't create a knee-jerk response on the regulatory agency side. It is a lot about language.
We're already on record with the County Board of Health.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, you are.
I mean, we're on the radar already, which is why we're looking at this, because we believe eventually we'll have to do something about it.
The other interesting thing from my point of view, and another reason why this smells really good to me is, I don't have many communities that have the proximity to the Hudson River that you do. There is no community that I know of that has these issues so close to the river.
So,
I could,
go ahead.
2 more questions.
Sure.
Well, first one is a statement. What we learned from the landfill stuff was DEC is not going to throw us under the proverbial bus because they're going to be on the hook for funding. And if they don't have the funding to help us, they're not going to turn us in.
Right.
So we learned that already. The second thing is, how many months into this process are we before we know what the ongoing costs are going to be? Like what we learned with Vandenberg Code with 778 is the annual cost of the sewer should cost somebody.
Mm-hmm.
How far into this do we until we find that out.
Well, you mean what an average sewer rate should be for the hamlet of Rhinecliff?
Yeah.
We could tell you that tomorrow. The state has, EFC bases its 0% loan structure on what.
No, I'm not talking about loans, I'm talking about.
No. Let me finish my sentence. The state bases its application of federal loan subsidies on a targeted dollar amount per community. And it's based on the median household income of the community. And we could do either it's listed in the census or we could do an income survey, but I can tell you what the average rate in New York State is for a rural community with X amount of septic.
Okay, but the way I understood this is we're not borrowing anything.
No,
We're gonna get a grant,
right.
and what I wanna know is if we have to put in a plant, let's say we have to put in a plant just for.
What's your is going to be?
How much is it gonna cost a year on average to operate that plant?
That's
per
an
parcel?
engineering question.
And I wanna know how many months into the process before we know the answer to that.
That's for you.
I'm sorry.
What is the O&M going to be on a proposed plan of action? That should come out of final design, I would think.
Yeah,
So how far is that in?
that's not gonna be prepared for the grant application, which is a preliminary engineer's report. That is going to need to be prepared as part of the map plan report. We're talking about a municipal district. So, a municipal district would have to be defined with a map plan report, which talks about capital costs and if necessary, finance costs, but maybe that's not necessary here, and operation costs. That's the time at which you would get that.
Okay, but so how long from now is that?
March.
I don't think it's March. If
Not
if
that
they're,
March.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
that's March.
if they're getting the funds in March or April, then I would think that you're going to want to do a public participation process. You need to figure out how large your service area is gonna be. You're gonna wanna do it in a sensitive way where the town board is not shoving this project, but having participation of the residents for maybe carving out what the service area would be to make as many people happy and displease as few people as possible. So I would think that you're a few months down the road after that.
So, okay, I'm sorry.
I think summer.
I'm not in the contract yet.
Summer.
I'm not in the contract yet when I get that.
No,
Okay.
you mean for the money?
Mm-hmm.
The issue is that if you move into the final map plan report, you'll be paying for that phase. That is an expense that you can either borrow for or be reimbursed out of the grant for. But if you find at the end of that map plan and report, you've got an O&M cost and a rate structure that is going to be unacceptable to the majority of the residents in the district, and you decide to go, not to sign the contract on the big grant award, then you're left stuck with the cost of having gone through the map plan report.
Okay.
That's what you get.
But Victor, in terms of the cost to the homeowner, assuming that we get the grant and we build this thing, all we're talking about is the operational cost. There shouldn't be a capital cost. There shouldn't be a further design cost.
No.
Let's hear
Correct.
it.
What?
Let's hear what people.
Let's go.
Yes.
Go ahead, Matt.
I had some comments about the sewer district. I've heard since I've...
Introduce yourself.
Oh, my name is Matt Rosenberg, I'm a resident of Rhinebeck. And since I moved there more than a decade ago, there's always this anecdotal evidence, oh, the sewer's bad, but they're gonna shut us down. I've heard everything in the world. In my house, they did something in the 80s which solved this problem. They did block grants. They found houses that had leaking sewage, septic, and they helped pay homeowners to fix them and replace them. My house has a dosing septic system which was put in under that block grant before I purchased the house. Perfectly engineered, it worked fine. It didn't cost $8–10 million. Probably, if you figure the hamlet of Rhinecliff is approximately, according to the census, 150 houses, 350 people. If 10%, and I'm just making up a number which sounds kind of high, if 10% of 150 houses are leaking directly into the Hudson, that's 15 houses. Those could be identified like they did in the 80s. You can do dye tests, they have even more sophisticated tests. You could look for a federal grant to help those people get new septic systems. As far as what we know about polluting the Hudson from Rhinecliff, we know that the biggest watchdog agency, or actually organization, is the River Keepers. They monitor 75 locations along the Hudson. They don't monitor anything next to Rhinecliff. They don't find any problem coming out of Rhinecliff. They never have. You can look at the reports they come out with every month. From Norrie Point to Tivoli Bays, those are the 2 points, north and south of Rhinecliff on our side. They're both like the lowest levels of anything registered, and they don't even monitor near us because they don't even consider it a problem. The DEC, when I saw the conversation about the DEC, do we have any letters to do it? No one actually said, yes, we have letters. Oh yes, they've been complaining for years. Because you don't have letters from the DEC complaining for years that you have such problems. Now what I did hear is a lot of conversation about how we can spend other people's money. I'm not a tea partier, but I don't necessarily believe in writing grants, which were really designed to help people from a terrible storm. I was in Rhinecliff during Sandy. I didn't even have the lights go out. Wasn't a terrible storm. Are there stormwater problems that we could write a grant for? I think that's totally reasonable. The stormwater issues, there's no ongoing maintenance except with the highway department. You build a sewage plant, I heard already that it's definitely going to need a pumping station. There's no question whether we pump it and take it somewhere, or we pump it all the way to the village, or pump it to what might be a case would be to get land we don't already own. The town doesn't own any land to put a sewage treatment plant above Rhinecliff. They would have to get it. And then they'd have to put a sewage treatment plant, and then you're talking about all this potential historic preservation issues that you're going to have to deal with because every bit of land there is historically important. I feel like someone just put a pot of money in front of us and was like, oh, we gotta get it because it's there. But you're finding a solution to a problem. We have I haven't seen the problem actually quantified. There isn't years of data coming back and say, oh yeah, we really have to fix this. Suddenly we have this opportunity. I see an opportunity to get a lot of money, and there's just anecdotal evidence. Yes, you can find people in Rhinecliff who will say, oh yes, it smells bad. It smells bad in that stormwater. I don't know what smells bad. Is it organic matter rotting from a deer that died up the road, or is it someone's septic system that's rotting or going through the stormwater? We have never investigated. No one's ever complained in terms of the DEC. And we're talking about something which we know just from the Catskill Creek problem is going to be $8 to $10 million to build that plant. And the residents of Rhinecliff, after this thing is built, are going to have to pay. There was no answer here about how much they're going to have to pay because you don't know. They're going to have to pay for decades to come. I have a perfectly good working septic system. Why would I want to pay for a sewer district that I don't need to join? The hotel, which is the largest commercial institution in Rhinecliff, has its own sewage treatment plant. Why would they want to join a sewage treatment plant when they already have a $500,000 sewage treatment plant? So what is this being built for? And I mean, I understand there are certain residents that would benefit. There are certain homeowners that would benefit from having a sewer district. But I don't know, you build it for, 1 or 2 people or 5 people. Block grants, we did it before, we can do that again if that's a real problem. If you're doing the drainage, if you're doing an issue about stormwater and you discover, oh, this person is tied right into our storm drain, well, they're going to have to be dealt with. There's a block grant which they can get money from, and then they can get a new septic system. And even if it is a little more expensive, as Nancy pointed out, some of the newer systems she was able to get one to work in a small space. That's still possible. No one has pointed out that there's any historic record of there being any actual sewage problem except for, oh, there is one. Just saying it doesn't make it so. So those are my comments.
I
Yes.
just want to clarify, so you're proposing that perhaps we look at a stormwater drainage system only
Yes,
and deal with individual problems as a separate issue?
exactly,
Okay.
yes. And potentially, if there is a grant that you can get to put a block grant in that people could dip into when they have a septic problem, that's what was done in the 80s. It's already been done once.
94, I think,
Or
right?
94,
Yeah.
it was the late 80s, but okay, 94. So that solution seemed to have worked and solved a lot of people's problems. So that seemed like.
Thank you, that's.
Thank you, Matt. One thing, though, and I think that's a very well-reasoned statement, if I may say so, but the houses in Rhinecliff are so old, you have to presume that those that haven't failed yet will ultimately fail someday. And this might be a good time to address future failings as well. But I see your point.
Before we take the next comment, a quick question for Victor. Could we do something like that, stormwater only, and then ask for grant money to deal with individual issues?
You can ask for stormwater. Actually, it's interesting that it was a block grant program. Would have gone through the county compact in an earlier administration. Unless there's a low-income situation, block grants are not applicable to individuals and private property owners. Yes, you should examine the possibility of doing a stormwater system and doing something that manages whatever wastewater issues you think are going to arise. You need more research on what the problems really are there on the wastewater
Okay,
side.
but this grant opportunity could maybe give us that flexibility to do stormwater
Absolutely. We
only
have-
and deal with instead of creating a sewer district, maybe just deal with the individual problems as we uncover them?
Yes.
Within the context of this?
Well, we have to quantify what it is we're going to do at the get-go.
Fair enough.
Do you want to talk about managing those issues at the beginning of, and limiting the scope of the wastewater side of the equation? Absolutely, that's an option that should be on the table,
Fantastic.
but that should be a recommendation from your engineering firm.
Thank you.
And we did that with the cove also, we were talking about.
Right.
We reduced the scope of the project and the collection portion of it.
Absolutely.
So, if it's the same sort of a thing, sure. My question is, the grant, I mean, will it cover the investigation of finding out what the problem is? I mean, we don't know what the problem is.
It will cover, yes, it'll cover all of your engineering expenditure. My recommendation, frankly, but I'm the grant writer, I would tell you to put in for the most expensive approach, and then if you've come up with an alternative that resolves the issue in a way that meets the requirements of a 100-year storm. The issue with failing septic is that you're banking on the continuing maintenance of private homeowners and replacement of the systems every 20 years or so. You're banking on that. The issue with severe storm events, which is the core of this federal appropriation, is what happens in a 100-year storm event when stormwater that exceeds its normal path of flow, even with a state-of-the-art stormwater management system, floods properties that have failing septic systems. And what is the impact on the water quality that goes in the Hudson, into the Hudson in that case? And the other question that I'm running into a great deal, I'm running it into Wappingers in the town of Poughkeepsie, is how many homes in Rhinecliff are well-based, and what are the impacts of stormwater washing septic from failing septic systems into any kind of a watershed situation that's going to have an impact on the aquifers. We're finding this again and again and again. The town of Wappinger, village of Wappingers Falls, I'm working with Woodhill Green as a separate client, which is a low-income residential complex.
Right, appreciate it. Yeah, let me
Sorry,
just take
go on.
comments from Andrew.
Yeah.
Andrew Shepherd, I live in Rhinecliff. I actually live up on Kelly Street before you get to Russell. And a couple of things. There are people on well water. My neighbor's on well water. They, a couple of years ago, actually redid the well because they are bound by rock and it would cost them like $20,000 to get to the water. So we are on a giant rock with a little bit of dirt on top. And you're asking this community to endure a lot of tearing up of our very tight defined roads that are already, you hear people complaining about traffic and sight lines and that all the time, putting us through all of that. And in the end, when it's all done, everything's paid for, whatever, we're the ones holding the bag for the pumps, the generators that have to be redundant and tested all the time. And when all's said and done, nobody's actually connected when you put in a plant like this. Each homeowner would have to bear the cost of connecting. My neighbors just down the way just had a Board of Health approved repair to their septic system. Are they gonna jump on board, or any of those people in the 5-acre zone gonna jump on board to be in your district? No. You guys have an affordable housing committee in this town. We have people on fixed incomes, and you're gonna throw them into a new tax district. The other thing is, we're not living in
I
a
think that's
technically.
preliminary, though,
Well,
to say that. None
No,
of us have said
but if that would be the end result with the septic system, sewer system for wastewater. That would be a district that you put people into.
We've also just identified that we could perhaps do a stormwater drainage system and deal with each individual thing separately.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure, I just want to, emphasize some points that we have to be extremely careful with this. And, the hotel didn't ask me to pay for their system, but we don't live in a stagnant technological age either. Wastewater is a huge problem around the globe. People are making a lot of money coming up with better ways to treat it. The thing about us being on the Hudson River as opposed to on a creek, being closer to the river is actually to our advantage. If you've been down by Rhinecliff, there's a channel, and the water goes by 4 times a day. Billions of gallons of water go by with little Rhinecliff sitting there. The problem with pollution is dissolution. It's so much water that it's not really that big a problem. That's why it hasn't been identified, that's why people don't test it. Thank you.
Let me ask you, if we do nothing, and the DEC says, hey, you're polluting the Hudson, do something about it,
Well,
that's gonna cost millions of dollars to do something about it. And
why would it cost
what do we
millions
do
of
then?
dollars?
Well, we'd have to put in some kind of sewer system.
Why is that? I saw on this old house, a rerun of this old house a couple of weeks ago. They put a plant in the basement and they drank the water out of the end of it.
So you're assuming
I'm assuming individual solutions are much better off. If you had to fix 20 properties, completely fix them, it costs $10,000 to do it. That's $200,000. That's not millions of dollars. And as I said, this isn't stagnant. These things are changing constantly. There's development and changes in this technology. So I guarantee you, you've lived with Vandenberg Cove. What did those filters cost you? Just the filters. One thing goes wrong, and you could say, oh, it's only going to cost this much. The community's going to have to bear the cost of any problems. The town's not going to run in and rescue. It's just, why would you ask all these homeowners, maybe 150 homeowners, to bear the responsibility of something that isn't necessarily their problem?
Well, I think we've already determined that we're looking at various options.
Okay,
So,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
thank you.
So, we have a motion and second to approve.
Well, I think we have,
Thank you. I didn't see your hand up, Richard.
What's that?
I didn't see your hand up, but,
Oh, no, I didn't have it. I was waiting for Andrew to finish. Richard Kopashansky, I live in Rhinecliff and have some other properties down there. And I don't know where to begin with it. I mean, I'm with Andrew. I think we have to be very careful with it. And as far as I understand it, I mean, we're not even going for a feasibility study here. We're going for, like, the real deal. I mean, it's not a feasibility study. What Victor is proposing is getting Fed money to actually do wastewater and sewer treatment for Rhinecliff, right? Not a feasibility study.
Well, I think we're engaging in an agreement with Victor to apply for it, and then we're talking about different options to follow through with at least portions of it. It's
And
not
part of
like
that preliminary
we're not
engineering.
trying to get,
Preliminary engineering could be a feasibility.
Exactly,
Mhm.
that's when we're.
Well, I think that's a good step. That's what I think we're all kind of, you know, we have to be careful and whatever, but, you know, I disagree with these guys about, you know, there's no proof that there's been problems with Rhinecliff emptying raw sewage and systems actually failing all the time and just going into the Hudson River. You know, it was 1994, Elizabeth, that there were 14 houses that were cited that were going to be condemned in Rhinecliff unless they came up with systems. And, you know, and the grants were somewhere between $4,000 and $6,000 each. They did not take commercial areas, so the China Rose building and the hotel did not get a grant because they were commercial. Patty's Bar got a grant because they claimed it was like a private club for the firehouse, so they got away with it. But and that was 20 years ago. Now, you know, I think a lot of properties were not properly identified, and they got through it without having to put a system in. I think the 20-year systems that were put in, some of them are failing. I think if we all had an acre or two down there, I would say this is really a stupid idea. But because we have postage stamp properties, most of them right down in there, not necessarily where Andrew is, but right down in the middle there, it's pretty tough. And you know, I'm a product of the '60s, and you know, we always, you know, we tried to turn it around. You know, we started to say no littering. You know, let's make things better. Let's like try to keep this earth going. You know, it would probably, you know, hurt me as far as monetarily more than most people paying whatever that might be, that yearly, if there is a tax. We don't even know that is for sure. But you know, it really in the long run, and really thinking about the big picture, it is really the right thing to do. Because, I mean, Andrew, you said, you know, we have this current that goes through there, and so just, you know, there's a little bit of sewage going into it, you know, I mean, it's cleaning it up. I mean, I don't think that's the right way to look at that. Because all of the communities that were built along the Hudson River, they were built here because they can empty into the Hudson River, and that's where we got to in the '60s. And it wasn't just the big companies that were polluting it, it was all these little towns. It's not necessarily the DEC that's going to shut us down. It's, again, the Dutchess County Board of Health, because they continually ask questions about what's going down there, what's happening down there, and I get hit with some things from time to time. So it is a problem. And it's easy to like stick your head in the sand and say, you know, we can all get these, you know, high-end, very modern ways and techniques and things to service our own, but there are some buildings that just cannot do it. That's the way that is. So I'd like to go to the next step, wherever that is. I think we have to be very careful. I don't know, you know, I'm sure there's no room for a sewage plant. Maybe I'm not sure. Maybe there is. That was interesting about carting whatever sewage we do somewhere. I mean, I don't know, I never thought about that. But I do think we have to do something because it's failing, and it's failing, it's you mentioned the hotel. The hotel would consider, even though they put in a $500,000 system, they can't even keep functions going down there in the middle of August because it still smells right in front of the building. You know that, I know that. It's terrible down there. I don't know, maybe they should fail. Maybe that's what you want. But I think we should go to the next step. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to add one thing.
I'm sorry, if anyone would like to pursue, investigate what's going into the storm drains and send little cameras up there with GPS and identify what the problems are, fine. It should be the property owner that's responsible. You shouldn't ask the whole community to fix it. The other thing is that while current zoning is, I spent 6 years going to comp plan meetings around this, keeps the development away from the hamlet. Put in a sewer plant, zoning will change. You know, we do this comp plan every 10 years, zoning changes. You put in a sewer plant, it's a magnet for development. Someone's gonna walk in and say, look at these overburdened customers, that they're paying a too high a rate. Let me add some housing and we'll reduce the cost for the neighborhood. This happens over and over again.
Thank you. Well, I think we're going to motion a second to approve engaging with Victor Endeavor to.
Do we have an open motion?
We do.
Let me just make a question to Victor. Can we didn't approve tonight? There seems to be among the three people here a division, and Nancy's still thinking about her ballpark, which I mischaracterized, the dimensions of. If we defer the contract to go ahead with this for 2 weeks, would that still give you enough time? It seems to me the LOI is not a big deal to do. We meet again on the 25th, and maybe
We have to,
again.
we do have to have a special meeting to adopt the budget though, so we'll be before that. Pretty before that.
How much lead time do you really need if we decide to?
I would defer to Nancy about that, because I can write about the issues as they exist in an unquantifiable way at this point, largely because a lot of research hasn't been done and needs to be done.
But do you need that for the LOI?
I need a dollar number, and I need a cursory analysis of what is conceivably the existing set of problems, and I need a dollar figure around the more expensive solutions. If in the context of putting together your final design and the map plan and report, and you explore all of the possibilities that have been discussed here tonight, which I think you should do, and we come up with an alternative that has a guaranteed 75 to 100-year life to it that the municipality is responsible for. Again, my point about this is great. I mean, I have a septic system. I have arguments with my neighbors over how often they should be inspected, cleaned, and maintained, because everybody has got a different budget and a different idea about those things. And I sit on top of my own aquifer and my own drinking water. So, you know, I know that that I am beholden to my neighbor's capacity to maintain their septic units, probably for my drinking water, or at least, you know, for the current system I have in the house, which takes up.
Excuse me just 1 second. Would it be possible maybe to increase the amount that you need to find out some of these questions in the beginning?
In the front end.
Yeah, that's what I'm
You
wondering.
mean before the letter of intent?
No, after the letter of intent.
And before the full application.
Oh, okay, before the full application, do some investigation?
Yeah, like what if we did put the camera down every house in the hamlet? And really, I mean, how much could that cost? A couple $100,000, maybe $60,000?
I don't think you're gonna put a camera down, but you might do some dye testing.
We could do it for every house in the hamlet and
Why
see.
do we want to do it where we may not get the grant? You could put that in as part of the grant. You can always turn
Yeah,
down
that's
the
true.
grant if you you know you're gonna
I'm just
get
trying
it.
to think of the best way of putting it in.
The other thing you can do, the other thing, and I've just done this 5 or 6 times, between the time that the LOI was asked by FEMA to go to full application and the point at which the full application was due, discovery has happened, the projects have changed, the budgets have changed, the problem still exists. That's what they're most interested in doing, is finding a resolution for the problem. So, you know, if we proceed with, you know, I'm dealing with the town of Cornwall that doesn't have an engineering thing, and they're saying $52 million for a new plant off the flood plain. That's the dollar figure I put in for the LOI. Now I've got some specifics in the 6 weeks between that period of time. That dollar figure has dropped substantially because placing the new plant where they want is going to decrease their I&I issue, which is also going to be less of a cost. So, for purposes of the LOI, project definition, a discussion of the most probably basic, straightforward, and labor-intensive way of dealing with it. And then subsequent to that, if we go into full request, if we go into the full thing, and we've got a couple of different options on the table, some of which may be cheaper and are more appropriate. That's the way to go.
Okay,
I would also tell you that even after that point, you can amend it.
great, good, thank you.
Well, but I thought we have an open question to Nancy as to how much time do you need if we defer this tonight for 2 weeks? Are you gonna
I
have
still
enough
think
time?
you're gonna wanna engage in a grant,
In a letter of
exploration.
intent,
I mean, you still wanna look for the
I think
grant.
we have an open motion to vote to approve this tonight, and I think we should vote on that.
Okay, but
Yes.
I guess I have a question as part of the discussion to Nancy, is Victor said he needs some preliminary engineering. If we did not vote tonight on this, how much time do you think you need to give Victor that which he needs?
But she's not under contract,
Yeah,
why would
we-
she do
yeah.
that?
I mean, we don't have an application, we don't have a deadline, but from what Victor's talking about, it sounds like it's a day or a day and a half of work. You know, the next time I have a day or a day and a half with no work allocated to it, is a cheap
Another
question,
question.
but I'm a consultant, so I'm used to doing things on my own time, vis-a-vis tonight, when I don't work for you, but I'm here. You know, we can work it out. I'm a little concerned about when you're gonna make a decision.
We're gonna vote right now.
I think we have an
Okay,
open motion.
and I'm not being retained tonight.
And thank you for coming. It was
Yes.
very, you know,
Okay.
All right, so, with that, are we ready to vote? Motion second, all in favor, aye. Aye.
Well, what are we voting on? What is to accept the contract with Victor?
yes.
This would allow us to pursue the grant.
Okay, and at some point, would you,
We have
oh, sorry.
4 ayes, I believe. Have nay? 3 nays?
I would do nay, I would wait
Okay.
2 weeks to hear more from the public.
So just 4 to 1 vote, that would be so moved. So,
And at some point, perhaps you'd hire me to
Yeah.
do a little bit necessary to it.
With moving ahead with sensitivity and hearing what was said tonight, I just want to say thank you, and that's what personally I'll be looking for. We're not looking to lay a huge burden on a
we do
community.
have a responsibility to find out the problem.
Yes.
At least here, no matter
Yes.
what,
Yes.
no doubt about that.
Well, I'm
Treading lightly is our question as we move
And
forward.
being sensitive to the people that we're going to serve and not looking to create a huge
Yeah.
burden. And I guess we'll be in touch about, having you do your day and a half of work
So
too.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
You're welcome.
very much.
Just
Thank you.
to address some of Joe's,
No, we're good.
No, we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Call Joe and address it.
No, you
online.
can tell me after.
I'd be happy to do a public hearing if you want.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you.
And Nancy, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
I'll call you.
Yeah, yeah. You
She'll
got
never
that?
take your call again.
I think this one she will. Thank you.
Thank
Next,
you,
item
Nancy.
13 is the resolution approving 2014 contract for winter farmers market.
Motion?
Second.
There's nothing here about the winter farmers, right?
Tom, There's nothing specific, but the farmer's market points out that they have 5 vendors in their regular farmer's market, so that they do serve local farmers. I'm just looking for the list. What? Yeah, okay.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nice, what's up to you?
You opposed?
I didn't oppose. I serve to support the farmers market. It helps out in the economy here in the village. So for that reason, I do want to support the local farmers and hopefully see a Rhinebeck farmer here. So for that reason, I do vote aye.
Aye. Aye.
So moved. Item 14 is a resolution approving the rates for CDPH.
CDPHP. Second?
This is the one, Gina, that we heard 9 to 10%, but we went with the high deductible.
Right.
2%?
And, well, 1% they're not.
Oh, wow.
Very cool.
All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item 15 is a resolution retaining agreement with the Hyman Stroud Tribal Council.
Motion.
Second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Joe, thank you for this, we're
Thank you.
continuing work on this.
Yep.
Item, thanks, Jeff.
All right, I didn't hear which one are we voting on?
The
We
Stroud.
voted
I-
Stroud, Hinman
And Stroud.
Oh, yes.
Behind us. Item 17 is a resolution accepting the revised proposal for Royal Carting expanded hours for an additional fee at the transfer station. That would open up some time on Thursdays from, I believe, 1 to 4.
1 to 4, they had to bump it up earlier because it gets dark so early and their insurance carrier was concerned. That's what they said, Bruce. So I said, that's fine, and then when it gets lighter in the spring, we can revisit having that open later.
Reach out to any of the people who have reached out to
Yes.
us, and
That was fine, but for people who do work, they'll still be able to go on Saturday.
great.
And the fee is only $1 per person if they're coming just to dump recycling.
So we're right back to where the original offer was.
No, except we have a weekday. We didn't have.
We had the weekday
But
with
not
the
year
original
round,
offer.
not year round.
They
though.
closed it, no, they closed it in September.
No, they came back after they were here with an offer, and you said, no, we want it later, let's go back, so what we agreed on was what they offered.
Right, but we didn't know at that time that they would have an insurance policy, so initially they said it would be more convenient if they could do it later.
And they did assure me that when it stays lighter later, that they will revisit it and we can extend it later.
But Gina, my question is, we're back to Thursday from Wednesday?
No,
Is that what their letter says, or is this a mistake?
that's what his letter said, but I thought they switched it to Wednesday.
I thought so too, his letter says Thursday.
The email you forwarded to me said Thursday.
Said Thursday, but their sign up at the thing was Wednesday.
Can you, I think we're approving it for Tom to sign it, whether it's Wednesday or Thursday.
But I will confirm
But
the
you
actual
can
date.
confirm whether it's Wednesday or Thursday.
I know that his email did say Thursday, John, and that took me by surprise as well, because I thought they had switched it to Wednesday. But I'll confirm with him, Vincent, tomorrow.
But we're agreeable with either,
Yes.
and we're authorizing Tom to sign it. That's what we're
We have
voting
an
on.
open motion,
Yeah.
a motion.
Already had it. Aye.
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 Opposed? So moved.
John says we don't have we didn't open it.
A motion?
A motion and a second.
Motion? I'll motion.
A second.
Okay.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Item 18 is a resolution introducing a local law, and I believe this is for a notice of public hearing to establish the office of a single appointed assessor pursuant to Real Estate Property Tax Law 328 now. Now, this is a notice of public hearing, and this is what we're advised by council. So we would have to set a date, which by, also, we also have to set a date to approve, we just do the
Budget.
board meeting too.
Well, the 25th is what the resolution says.
Okay.
What do you mean?
That would be our next town board meeting.
Town board meeting. So the motion is to approve the November 28th to set a public hearing
5th. 25th.
for local law number blank 2013. Motion second.
The motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
And that
So
hearing's
that-
gonna be on the 25th, right?
That'll be on the 25th, right?
My phone is dead. Is that a regular town board meeting?
Yes.
25th? That's the Monday before Thanksgiving? Okay.
I will not be here for,
Okay, I'll email you guys.
Maybe it'll go quicker.
So
I don't think it was me.
also we have to set a date to approve the, special meeting to approve the budget, and that has to be by the 20th. So if you guys could look at your,
I can't look at mine, but I'll work with whatever.
20th is the Wednesday, 18th is the Monday, so the 20th is Wednesday. So you guys have to, anytime between now and the 20th.
Can I bring up one point? I'm fine with either of those dates, but we got an email today from our bookkeeper saying that we had an additional $6,500 in change before we met our tax cap. At which point are we going to put that into a capital plan line and our capital projects line? When do we do that?
I think at our next meeting, we can
Amend the budget.
change the budget before we adopt it.
You want to set it for Monday the 18th?
Can we do Wednesday the 20th?
That's our last day, I think.
Yeah, let's
Okay,
put
Monday
the-
the 18th. What time?
You can set it earlier.
Whenever you like.
but,
I'm not available from about 11 till 12.
I'm just a little nervous because I can't see my calendar, but I'll check it as soon as I get it.
18th, what time?
4 or 5 o'clock?
4 o'clock?
4 or 5?
Perfect.
Okay, 4.
Okay.
So motion is second to approve the 18th of November for 4 PM to adopt the budget.
A motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that would conclude
I have
everything that I have.
one more little thing. It'll be quick. I heard from a constituent several meetings ago, we had raised the point of the Stone Church Cemetery and whether or not we were going to do maintenance, and I was asked to follow up on that, and I don't remember where we are with it.
We're going to continue to do maintenance, and I've reached out to Tom LeGrand to find the actual deed. If we're taking care of the maintenance, we should have the deed, and he's going to be researching where it
Maintenance
is.
is in the restoration as well, there's
And Suzanne is applying for a grant.
so we're still looking at that, and you'll report back.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll.
You mean the one at 999G, not necessarily Stone.
I'm sorry, yeah, the
Right.
corner of
Way,
Way and, yeah.
right.
All right.
We're working on that with the
Thanks,
cemetery
so that is
committee.
still in the works, thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
All right, so motion is second to
Let
adjourn.
Leo know that.
Motion.
a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.